So I've been wanting to make this video for quite some time now, and I didn't know what the best way to approach it was because this can get really complicated with calculations, because you're definitely going to need a calculator, a piece of paper, and a pen to figure this out. But the beauty of all this is you're going to be able to find your sensitivity, and not only that, be able to carry it over to any game you play. This includes first-person shooters or even third-person shooters. Essentially anything that requires you to move your mouse around, you can have that perfect sensitivity for all those games, and you don't have to worry about converting from this game or that game. And it can get complicated, but I'm doing this in Battlefield 1, so it's a little bit more broad and simpler to understand, but hopefully I'll be able to get the message across and help you guys find the best sensitivity that works for you. So to start it off, we're going to have to go here and go to the options and look at the controls. You're definitely going to want to have raw mouse input on. To put it simple, there's been studies done where having it off can cause input lag in different games, including Battlefield or any other game. It just tends to have input lag if you were to do a full 360 or anything else. And I'm not saying you're going to be doing 360s all over the place, but there is essential input lag for when you move your mouse to reading it. Now, what does raw mouse input mean? Essentially, if you have it on, it takes all the data directly from the mouse. So any movement you make is being read directly from the mouse, and it's not taking in any other factors in there. And it will also take a bit of the driver settings for the mouse. Okay, so now we're going to want to look at your window sensitivity, because window sensitivity can have an effect on your in-game sensitivity. So you want to have this as perfect and as comfortable for you as possible, so you only have to worry about your gaming sensitivity and nothing else. And the number one thing is to turn off enhanced pointer precision. If you don't have a fancy mouse, that would be here in Windows, but if you do, that's enable pointer precision. You want to turn that off. I have the Roccat LiDAR. You can use any mouse, it doesn't really matter, but this video is to show you how to find that best sensitivity. But these are key things you want to know, or at least understand when you're going to find your best sensitivity. The other thing is, with a fancy mouse, you can do some advanced settings and put the polling rate high, and in this case, I would highly recommend putting it as high as possible, because that is how fast the mouse refreshes, sending data from the mouse to the PC and back. The other thing is you can do some cool things like distance control, how high you lift your mouse off the mouse pad, so if you ever go for those massive, constantly picking up your mouse and flicking, you'll be able to read it even on the lift. Having just Windows settings, you're not able to do that, and there's some other really cool things about this mouse that I like, which include like a joystick on the side and a DPI switch here, which with a simple press will turn down my DPI, and if I let go, it increases the DPI back to what it was. So I'll get into this with another video, but right now we're looking on how to find your best sensitivity. So ultimately, yeah, you do want to have a pretty good mouse to get this done, but if not, you can just use enhanced pointer precision. Make sure that's off. Okay, so now that we're back in game, this can get complicated, so I'm going to try my best to explain it all. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find a target you can lock onto. And in this case, I'm just going to use this little corner between the wall to look at as my main aiming area. And I'm going to use my melee weapon out just so I can easily focus on the little crosshair. And what you want to do is, first of all, find a sensitivity when you go to your controls where you're able to do a full 360 on your mouse pad, going from the top left corner of your mouse all the way to the top right corner of your mouse. So essentially, you want to find it so when you're aiming at that target, you can move your mouse across, and by the time you finish that 360, you're right back on target. So that's the full 360 of my entire mouse, and it's about 7% for me. This can be different for you, so find out what your 360 sensitivity is. Now, this isn't to do 360 no-scopes on people. This is our starting sensitivity. What you're going to want to do next is multiply that sensitivity by 1.5 and also divide it by 2. And that ends up giving me two strange numbers, in this case 10.5 and 3.5. And Battlefield only allows me to give whole numbers. So if you're ever in this situation, what you want to do is complete that number, round it up or round it down. If it's 0.5 or above, round it up. If it's 0.4 or below, round it down. So in this case, instead of 10.5, I would be at 11, and instead of 3.5, I would be at 4. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to want to start off by seeing how comfortable that 360 sensitivity is for you to lock onto the target and move left and right locking on. Now, there's no easy way for me to say this. This is going to take time. It's a lot of like run and dry running it and practicing and seeing what works for you. At the end of the day, you're going to end up finding the sensitivity that works for you. and then be able to port that over to any game you want, which I'll explain later on in this video. So if you actually already have a sensitivity you're really comfortable with, I'll show you how you're going to be able to do that later on in this video. But you tried going back and forth, locking onto the target, and you got to spend some time doing this. And you end up finding that if it starts jumping, what you try to do is lock on as best as you can to the center. And if you feel like it's jumping too much or too little, you want to change that sensitivity. So if you're trying to lock on and you're jumping more to the right, it should be slower. And if you're moving back and it's jumping too less, you might want to make it faster. So before we do any changes on going slower or faster, we realize that the 360 sensitivity isn't comfortable. So let's go to the one where we multiplied it in the controls. In this case, we would be going up to 11. Let's see how comfortable that is and how much shaking we get out of it. See how well that works for me. It seems to be a little bit more shaky, and I have way more difficulty locking onto this. Now, I'm not going to throw it out right away. I'm going to just keep trying my best to lock on and see how comfortable this feels. And in all honesty, it really doesn't feel that comfortable to lock onto this. But for some of you, it might work. Others, it might not. So let's go back to the controls in my case, and I'm going to want to turn this back down to about 4. And like I said, this is just a lot of dry run and practice to figure it out. And I find that 4 works for me. So what you want to do now is you find the point between the two that works for you. And I found that 7, which is the 360 sensitivity, and 4 worked the best for me. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to add the 360 sensitivity and that sensitivity together, and then divide that by 2. And that gives us 5.5. But Battlefield likes whole numbers, so that number is going to actually be a 6 because we need to round that up. So let's test out how 6 works. And I'll keep doing this technique back and forth, and what I feel like is 6 seems to be just a little bit too fast for my liking because it's still jumping a bit. So now I found 6 still felt a little bit too fast and 4 felt more comfortable. So what I would do is I would add 4 to 6 and divide that by 2, and that obviously leads to 5. Then all I have to do is go back in and test it all over again and see how well that feels. And 5, right away I can already tell it feels super comfortable and a lot more easier for me to lock on to the target. So 5 would be the sensitivity I'm using. So I just want to mention that you don't have to do this in Battlefield. You can do it in any FPS game or any game for that matter to figure out your sensitivity. It doesn't matter. But the key thing is the main concept of what you're looking for is here, and this is how you do it. I do want to mention though, if you find that when you multiply it by 1.5 or if you divide it by 2, and you find it's either not fast enough or not slow enough, you're going to use the new sensitivity as your base and just repeat the process from the beginning. So let's say we felt it was not slow enough, and in this case 4 was the slower sensitivity, we would be able to multiply that by 1.5 and divide that by 2 and then find the range. Again, keep doing that until you find a range that works for you, and then you're going to cut it down. So ultimately we ended up finding that 5 was the sensitivity that worked for me. And once you found your sensitivity, that's the sensitivity that works for you, and all it takes is practice now playing with it, and you'll feel that the sensitivity is actually really good because you'll be able to flick and lock onto targets really well and quite accurately in this simple technique of finding your sensitivity. But now comes the trick of how do you convert this sensitivity from, say, Battlefield to any other video game you play as simple as possible without any difficulties. All you need is a piece of paper and a marker to do this. So you're going to get in game and you're going to line up with a certain point on the wall. And what you're going to want to do is put your mouse on the top of the mouse pad and have the paper under the mouse pad so the paper's not moving. Draw a line at that point, which is the center of the mouse. Now, you're going to have to either turn up your DPI if it's a really slow sensitivity. In my case, I was using 800 DPI. I went up to 1200 DPI in order to be able to do a full 360. So I'm going to just drag my mouse across on the top of that mouse pad, right back to the center, and then I'm going to draw a line there on the piece of paper. Now you can probably turn it up even higher so you're not drawing all the way across on the mouse pad or on the paper, so you have a much smaller range that you need to draw in order to do a 360. If you have a fast sensitivity, you don't have to worry about changing your DPI. You can just simply do that 360. But the idea is when you go to another game, like let's say Overwatch or something, you place that paper under the mouse pad and you just repeat the process with that higher DPI. Then you're going to be able to know that sensitivity for that game. and then you just have to turn down your DPI back to what it was in Battlefield. And that's how you convert your sensitivity from one game to another really easily. So let me know what you guys thought with a comment down below about this video, and a like would be greatly appreciated if you guys enjoyed it and found this video very useful and helpful for you. But there's some other videos on screen now, so check those out, and I'll catch you guys later.